If you like this video, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell icon to get the latest updates.
Hello team. Today onwards we are going to cover the SAP MM as a process on all the topics we have in SAP MM on S4HANA system. So I'll be conducting the sessions in theory plus practical together in a row. So we'll start with the basics, introduction, then how to do the cycles, and then how to configure the system, and all these things will go in a row. We'll take the classes and for 3 hours, right? We'll take 1.5 hour session, maybe a quick 5 minutes break in between. Again, you have a question, please feel free to ask me. And also I'll give enough gaps to just get the questions cleared on all the concepts. So intermittent breaks between every 2 minutes or 1 minute to just check how are you all following or not. If anybody is not able to follow, or if anybody has a question, please don't hesitate. Feel free to ask the questions. And any questions, any one of you, before we start? And yes, if nobody has a question, I would request you to be on mute. If any questions, please don't hesitate to unmute. Because if someone says no question and if I skip through it before someone asks a question, I don't want that scenario. So if no questions, that's okay. If any questions, feel free. So starting with now, we will be talking about the basic introductions to SAP and all. So before that, the basic introduction. So here we are today starting with about SAP Materials Management. Okay. And this is the disclaimers where what to do, what not to do, and all about the training. So we have this documentation done, and this will be shared to you as well, to all the participants. So no need to worry about it. Okay, for the notes. And today's agenda would be to cover the following aspects, like introduction to ERP, and then what is ERP, and what are all the other packages we have in ERP and SAP, and a bit about FICO, though we are not doing FICO, but a bit about FICO, then the architecture, then we go on. So this would be the agenda for first half, and second half we will have the second different one. So talking about ERP. So usually I try to make my classes interactive team. So any questions, if you're able to answer, please feel free to answer. Even if it's wrong, that's okay. So if we start with what is ERP? ERP is abbreviated as Enterprise Resource Planning. I repeat, ERP is abbreviated as Enterprise Resource Planning. So the enterprise resource planning is basically in specialized IT tools which are there in the market to run the business cycles. Okay, so what happens with them is, let's take a different examples of different industries and see why this ERP is required. So for this, I'll take an example of a notepad where if you talk about a small business like your grocery store, right? A small grocery store down the lane in your street, you see, what do they do for their business transactions? They do it all manually, like how much is brought, how much stock is brought, sold, kept in stock, and spoiled, and how much is the sales, how much is the purchases, how much is the inventory, right? And how much is the salary for the employee? Usually maybe one worker will be there, right? So these all transactions would not be stored on anywhere. They would be written maybe on a piece of paper, and profit or loss accounting, right, is done in general ledger books, or ledger books they call, right, at the year end. Whereas if you talk about an much improvised business, just the next level, a supermarket. Okay, so at a supermarket level, if you talk about what happens, so you will have a mechanized billing machines, right? So like the machinized billing machines which will do the billing for us, and then any from which what will happen is how much we have and how much is there, what is there, and all can be done. And also you see this, what we say is the profit or loss accounting will be done in systems, not in manually in the books. So when the business scale is increasing, you need some help of tools which eases your business process. So day-to-day operations of your business will get easier with the tools. So I'm talking about a very low level businesses like a grocery store, a supermarket, which have the turnover of some thousands or lakhs. But let's talk about, come to a scenario like Tata Motors. So you see Tata Motors is the biggest automobile manufacturer. So if Tata Motors has to have their operations run, so if you talk about Tata Motors, it's relevant in some six continents, different countries of operations. They do their businesses, their sales, and they have the manufacturing sites in different countries, right? So in those cases, they have different departments working, like purchasing, sales, warehouse, finance, HR, right? So production, etc. So these all departments will have thousands of transactions per year, where because the scale of business is huge. And let's suppose you take any companies of like Tata Group, let's suppose TCS, where Tata Technologies, Tata Advanced Systems, Chroma. So these are like, Tata is a conglomerate of hundreds of companies. So with these all businesses running in the large scale, they cannot do this maybe simpler tools. They cannot do their business with simpler tools or simpler manual paper based entries in their process, in their industries. So for these big companies which have different departments working on different activities all throughout the year, and the transactions are in huge number, they need a specialized IT tools which are called the ERP tools, enterprise resource planning tools. So these tools, what will they do is they help to have the transactions run in a streamlined manner for these companies. For big companies, ERP tools help to run the business transactions in a streamlined manner. So there are a lot of ERP tools available in the market. So remember, because you see ERP is required for mid to small scale to large scale industries. So because the amount of transactions, the amount of processes they run in different departments over a year is huge. They cannot keep writing on a piece of paper. So this IT based entry technologies, ERP tools for all the processes of their industry, like all the departments of their company can run, they can go into, right, different ERP tools which are available in the market. So there are a lot of ERP tools available in the market. So for example, if I give Infor, Oracle, then Microsoft Dynamics, then you have SAP, then very other smaller tools like such as Odoo and some QuickBooks, right? So lot of smaller tools are also available. So there are a lot of ERP tools available in the market, but out of all those available ERP tools, SAP is the market leader. SAP is the market leader. Why? Because of the integration SAP offers, which is unique with which is unique, which stands SAP out of the league, is the integration. That is, SAP can integrate all the business processes, such as your warehouse to purchase to sales, or your purchase to finance, sales to finance, production to warehouse to purchase, right? So with different departments, whatever the requirements you have, those can be integrated together easily in SAP with the documents. And the other advantage of SAP is it can also integrate with any other third party tool available in the market. So the finance integration in SAP is very strong than other tools. So which as a one in one single box we will have in SAP, which you will get to learn over the period of time. So this is the basic introduction for ERP and SAP. So any questions so far, anyone? Okay. So now comes to the question is, when SAP is being the market leader, we said it offers a lot of integrations. Yes, SAP is abbreviated. How is it SAP abbreviated? SAP is abbreviated as Systems, Applications, and Products in Data Processing. SAP is abbreviated as Systems, Applications, and Products in Data Processing. So SAP is basically the German software which is developed in 1972 by 5 ex-IBM employees. Okay, so where it has been evaluating and evaluating itself to the market needs today. So SAP is abbreviated as Systems, Applications, and Products in Data Processing. And remember, we never call it as SAP. SAP in German means some animal pig or something. So it's always called as SAP only. So please have this habit of using the word as SAP instead of SAP. So Systems, Applications, and Products is the introduction for it. So remember, ERP is required. ERP tools is required for big businesses where there would be a lot of transactions in a streamlined, smooth way we need to run. So there are a lot of ERP tools available in the market, out of which SAP is the market leader because of the integration it offers. And SAP is abbreviated as Systems, Applications, and Products in Data Processing. This is the basic introduction for ERP and SAP. I'll wait here for a second. If any one of you have any question, feel free to ask me. All right. So now we move on to what is SAP consisting of? What is SAP consisting of? SAP has always been a module-centric software. I repeat, SAP has always been a module-centric software where the broad classification of modules would be functional and technical. So the functional modules are the ones where there would be no coding at all. So without coding, what can you or do you do, or what will you do as a functional consultant in SAP in the industry? That is, you will be either having an development, that is an implementation project, or a support project. After you learn SAP, you will be either in a development or a support project. So development or implementation are the same, where you will configure the SAP system for the client, whereas in a support project, you will solve the issues what the end users will get. You will solve the issues what the end users will get as a functional consultant. So technical, we'll talk about in a bit. So functional, what happens is each business process of a company, SAP has categorized as a module. Each business process of a company, SAP has categorized is that as a module. That is, let's suppose if you talk about, let's start with SAP MM. MM stands for materials management. SAP MM stands for materials management, which talks about sourcing, procurement, and inventory part of a company. I repeat, SAP MM talks about sourcing, procurement, and inventory part of a company. Basically, the supply chain or the logistics part. Basically, the supply chain or the logistics part. So now comes the question is, after SAP MM, you see different other modules such as your PP for production planning, SD for sales and distribution, FICO finance and controlling, PS project systems, QM quality management, PM plant maintenance, HR human resource management, right? Like this, you have WM warehouse management and PP production planning, different modules you will have. So each individual module consultants will work with their client counterparts. Okay, will work with their client counterparts to get the requirements or to help with the solutions. This is the overall introduction of how the modules will be categorized. So now the question is, after these modules, right, each module consultant will work with their counterparts to either configure or solve the issues. So you need Of course, you learn multiple modules is good, but you have to be expert in a module. It takes time to you go through implementations or support cycles where you learn a lot of knowledge. So we'll be focusing on SAP MM as a module from now on in the introductions. Okay. And now comes the question is, what are technical modules? There are technical modules also in SAP, such as ABAP, Advanced Business Application Programming, Basis, Security, Fiori, etc. So these technical guys, what will they do is, basically, if you see basis team, they will set up the system, they will do the patch upgrades, and any basis any set basic setup activities of SAP will be done by the basis consultants. And then any during the course of work, like when we functional consultants will work with our client counterparts, any requirements of custom coding comes, that custom coding requirement will be done by the ABAP consultants. So you as a functional consultant need not to code anything, but you will have to give the requirement if at all a custom code requirement comes. So security team will be providing the access or removing the access for the way we need, and Fiori team will be working on the Fiori developments for the users, which I'll be talking in lately of this training also. So this is the architecture of SAP, where the functional and technical modules together will be working in order to keep the client's business process run up and running for their day-to-day activities. With this, I'll wait here for a second. Any questions, any doubts, any one of you?
Are you there?
Yeah.
Can you please tell me like what is project system module and HRM module?
Okay, so let I don't have an expertise in these modules, but what I know about them is, so let's talk about your procurement and inventories covered in in metals management, right? So your production planning in PP and sales in ST. The same way, your HR covers the hire to retire process. Hire to retire means whenever we hire an employee and whenever the retirement happens for an employee, the end-to-end cycle, right, of employees management in a company will be used with SAP HR module. So you see all the salaries, personal details, and also the leave management processes. Everything will be coming under the HR module. The same way, project systems is like uh, project-oriented procurement or project-oriented sales processes is something you can do, okay, using the PS module. So project management wise, like there would be some specific WBS called the project WBSs and all, using which the overall uh, process of this procurement and sales can be happening throughout the cycles using the project systems, which is much integrated with the finance, FICO, finance and controlling.
All right, thank you.
Yep. So team, these you see what here are the basic modules in SAP you have. Okay. So there will be advanced modules in SAP which SAP is bringing up. Like for suppose if I give an example, SAP MM is sourcing and procurement, all about your procurement and inventory. So there would be the advanced module for it from SAP, like SAP Ariba, which is a standalone procurement software, both for a direct and indirect you can use, which is itself a standalone product from SAP. Same SAP SD talks about sourcing and sales and distribution. There is SAP Hybris, which is the next advanced version you have. So, and then the same for WM, warehouse management, there is something called EWM, extended warehouse management. And then you have something called security, they have something called GRC. I say security is how the role should be maintained, GRC is whom should be the role given to, is very much relevant, but the advanced versions of SAP software you have. And ABAP, yes, you see Fiori with OData is the Fiori and OData is the something latest to what you have in ABAP. So this is how the like different advanced modules SAP is bringing in each space, where the standalone, these would be a standalone systems which can act and integrate with the backbone system. So we call all these modules together will be there in one system. We call it as a backbone system on which these independent modules can also act. So there would be differences, which from module to module the process is same, but how do you do in each system is different. That's how. So this is the basic introduction which we'll be going forward with. Any other questions, any one of you? Okay, some very basic introduction is given about FICO, just to make sure that, because every module will talk about, but FICO is something common for everyone. So which where every company's balance sheets, profit or loss accounting, all these processes, any accounts receivable, accounts payable, accounts payable, right? How the assets will be there, how whenever you sell anything, it's accounts receivable, right? You'll get the money from the customer. If you buy anything, accounts payable, you have to pay to your vendor, right? And how your basically your company codes are set up, and how your postings should happen, like which inventory accounts should hit. All these basic things will be done by the this SAP FI consultants. So the FICO consultants will be doing this activities where they'll be having a different accounts like bank accounting, asset accounting, travel management, you see, accounts receivable, payable, general ledger accounting. So there would be different activities the FI and CO guys will do. Okay. So this is about the very basic introduction about FICO, which we don't need in depth. Okay. But this is the basic. But because we are going to talk about more about SAP MM. So after this, we are going to talk about something called R3 and ECC. R3 and ECC. So three-tier SAP is having a three-tier architecture. R3 means three-tier architecture we have. So three-tier architecture is basically a database layer, application layer, and presentation layer we call. Database layer, application layer, and presentation layer. Three-layer architecture we have in SAP. So before that, there used to be R2 two-layer architecture, which is very way before 1990, which even before I was born. So right, okay, so that was very long ago. Now R3 is there in the market from 1990s itself, so you can consider this. You need not to learn R2 also, which is like basically very old versions, which is not existent from the last 20 years. So R3 came in from 1990s, and where you see this three-layer architecture is there in SAP. So before I talk about it, maybe I have a couple of questions. I have a couple of questions if anybody can answer. So on what OS your mobile runs? Any idea, anyone?
Unix or Android.
I think Android and iOS is the most common we see, right? So it runs on the OS, Android or iOS. And can someone name any applications you know in your mobile? Can you name any applications that runs on your mobile?
Chrome,
WhatsApp,
WhatsApp,
Gmail,
Gmail.
Facebook, right? Etc. So these are all the applications that are running on your mobile. And where is that data stored in your mobile? Where is the data stored? Whatever you have on your mobile. So when you're talking about it, two things. One is mobile storage. In your mobile it will be, right? Or let's suppose G Drive storage, Google Drive storage, which is in cloud, right? So if you see this, where it runs on OS where it has the applications which you will be using. So whatever the data you have, let's suppose you have a picture that will be stored in your mobile, right? And also it can be stored in G Drive or the Google email, right? So cloud or on-premise, where do you store? How do you store? It's up to you. So this is how an application runs. And you see the same way. If I ask you, how is your laptop runs? On what OS? Any idea?
Windows. Windows
Right? Let's
OS.
talk about it as Windows and Mac, whatever the OS they have. Okay. And then the same applications will run. And then you'll have a local storage, or you can have a OneDrive storage, right? Which the Microsoft gives. So this is how the same SAP also runs team. SAP runs on Linux US OS, okay, where the application itself is the SAP as an application you will have, and the data is stored in the database layer. So whatever the screen you see on SAP screen is the presentation layer. SAP screen, what you see for doing the transactions, like you do a WhatsApp message or you WhatsApp call or mobile call, is a application you use for any transaction. So the same way we have only one application called SAP we are using, which have different transactions you can use, right? Those will be on a presentation layer. And beside to it, you have an application layer where the application layer, you can consider it as a coding layer also. So any sort of coding and programming can be done in the application layer. And below to it, the bottommost layer is called the database layer, where the data is stored, where the data is stored. So now you see, basically what happens is the data that is stored in SAP will always be in a table format, because structured databases in the world, data will stored in the table. I'll tell you that there would be tables where the data is stored and structured. So there would be something called RDBMS concept. Any software engineers or CSE engineers will, or IT engineers will know. So which is not relevant for us. I'll just give an introduction. That is called relational database management structure. Database management structure. Okay. So where the data is stored in a structural relative format. So which I will talk about in detail in the subsequent classes. So the date, so whatever you do is in the presentation layer, you do the transactions that get stored in the database layer, and any programming for it to bring the data or store the data, that will be done through application layer. This is the three-layer architecture SAP is having, which we call the R3 architecture or R3 structure. So I'll wait here for a second. Any questions any one of you have? Okay. So if no questions, then we move on to something called ECC. What is the difference between R3 and ECC? ECC is basically abbreviated as Enterprise Core Component. Okay. Enterprise Core Component is nothing but same as R3. So ECC is the word we have in the later stage of 90s from SAP, where all the modules together, you will have all the modules will work in a single SAP system. So you'll have a single SAP system login where all the module consultants can work together. So the MM guy will go do for a procurement inventory invoicing. The sales guy will do a sales billing and delivery and billing. The finance guys go for a accounts receivable or payable. The HR guy for their activities, right? All of them can be done in one system, which is called the ECC system, which SAP has caught with. SAP has come up with the concept called ECC, which is the same R3 structure, right? Which is similar that all the activities can be worked on the same. Then later on, SAP came up with in S4, maybe in 2015. Okay, so before SAP came up with a concept called HANA as a database they have in 2013 or something. So HANA is an in-house database from SAP. HANA is an in-house database from SAP. Before that, if HANA is an in-house database from SAP, before that in ECC, what database SAP used to have? SAP ECC runs on Oracle DB. Oracle database SAP used to run. Okay. So then in 2013-12, they started HANA as a database, and 2015 onwards, they have started with a term called S4HANA. What is S4HANA? S4HANA is basically SAP suite for HANA, where the latest version of SAP which runs on HANA as a database. So SAP ECC used to run an Oracle database. With HANA as a new database, SAP got the new functionalities also developed, which is now it's calling as S4HANA. Okay. So what is the difference between ECC and HANA? There is like good kind of upgrades and process optimizations and user interface features which SAP gave, which we will be talking about them in later. But there are different versions of ECC and S4HANA, which we need to talk. So ECC used to have a version like version 4, 4.1, 4.2, like any upgrades used to have, right? 4.2, then 4.6. Then something like version 6 with EHP 7 is the latest version we have in SAP ECC. What is EHP? Enhancement package. Enhancement package. So what is this EHP 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? For each version, you can have 7 enhancement packages in SAP. You will have usually 4.1, any updates you get, not only in one module, guys, MMSD, FICO, throughout all the SAP system, any issues, bug fixes or enhancements to be done, SAP will release as an enhancement package. And if the next version comes, SAP will release as the next version. So you can relate this something to very similar to what you have in an Android, your mobile updates or iOS. So you have a version, any bug fixes or patches, upgrades will be done through through updates to you. And if the new version has to come, the total new version comes and you can update it. The same way SAP will bring as well. So if for different modules, so wherever the latest version is available, that we will implement for the client. So ECC version 6 with EHP 7 is, I guess, 2006 or 7 was the last version we have in SAP. Version 6 with EHP 7. So after that, SAP used to run the same way. And later on in S4HANA came up in 2015, where SAP started with S4 on-premise and on-cloud versions. SAP has came up with the concept of on-premise and on-cloud. So what is on-premise version? Where the database will exist with us and we will have the ownership and we will maintain its on-premise systems. On cloud is where the SaaS or PaaS products, where the SAP will maintain the cloud database for the client. So this S4 HANA is the latest versions we have, both on-premise and on cloud you will have. So with this, I'll give a pause here. Any questions on so far what we discussed here?
Hey, Puneet here.
Yeah,
I want to know that exactly what is the S4, abbreviation of S4.
Suite for HANA, you can say. where S4HANA is with the term SAP is calling, with HANA as a database, we are using the SAP enterprise structure.
Thank you. Suit for HANA. Yeah.
Right? Yep. SAP Business Suite for HANA, you can go. And then what we do is this S4 HANA, right? You have on-premise and on-cloud different versions team. The SAP S4 HANA system. So also remember, some people will write it like or some people will write S bar HANA, S4 HANA. So whatever is it, the same. There is no much difference. Okay. So in usual terms, we use S4 HANA rather than this. So if we write like this, the newcomers we write as oblique HANA, S bar HANA, something for HANA, they say, but you call it as S4 HANA. Okay. Both are same. When you come to on-premise and on-cloud versions, what is the versions we have in SAP? What SAP is providing? So on-premise, SAP is giving one version every year. I repeat, one new version every year SAP is giving, which is starting from 2015. I think, yeah, 1510 or 1511 they call. Huh. Then 1610, 1709, 1809, 1909, 2020, 2021, and 2022. So you see every year one version for on-premise SAP is giving, like it is evolving the features of SAP. Okay, in S4HANA in each version. So it's not like in 2015-11 you have something different and 2022 you do a different SAP. No, the same processes will run, but much optimized, better versioning, better analytics, better reporting capabilities in SAP is SAP offering in the each new version. So in 2015 November, 1511 means 2015 November, 1610 means 2016 October, 1709 means 2017 September, 2018 September, 2019 September. So in what month we are getting that version, SAP used to give like this: 1511, 1610, 1709, 1809, 1909. From 2020, SAP has started the numberings as year 2020, 2021, 2022, like that. So the latest version what we are having in the market, which SAP released, will be 2022, and before that 2021 and 2020 in the on-premise versions. If it's a cloud, 4 versions per year. 4 versions per year. That is, let's suppose you see 2022, right? 2208, 2203, 2206, 9, 12, right? So like that, every 3 months you will have one version. So how will they release is up to them. So if it's 2019, they used to have like 1903, 5, 8, 12. Then this year, same, maybe 2203, 2205, 8, 12. So like that, every 3 months, usually on a 3 month space, we will be getting a one new version in SAP, which is like the SAP will directly push to the client systems if it's on cloud. So these are the versions what you have in SAP. But remember, most implementations from the partner consultants like us will be doing on premise. We'll be doing on premise. So on cloud is where SAP will have the ownership of the database, and they will preserve the data in the cloud systems, and they can the configuration also, it's dependent. Either the client will be doing it, or the partners like us will be doing, or the SAP will do for the client. So this is the difference between on-premise and on cloud and the versions. Any questions? Anyone?
Yeah, so I'm Anjanelu, okay. So my first question is, for example, okay, so multiple companies are there, okay. For example, Tata Motors and all, UCT and all. So means, for example, if I'm implementing SAP to some company, so how I can suggest on what basis, and I can suggest, is it better to go with the on-premise or is it better to go with the on cloud or so how can I suggest and in which way I can suggest to the customer?
Good question. So this mostly would be on an architectural point of view question. Okay. So not as a functional consultant, we would say. The reason, the reason why I say that is when we say cloud or on-premise, there are two subvariants to them. Okay. So to your question, there are two subvariants to each of them. On-premise, we will talk about called self-hosted and the other is on cloud. So be it on-premise means either a self-hosted or on cloud, and also cloud, when we say pure cloud, it's private cloud or public cloud. So when we say self-hosted means, let's suppose Tata Motors. Okay. So Tata Motors is the company for which SAP implementation is required. So who is doing that? Let's assume that TCS is doing. Okay. So now Tata Motors should be deciding with the advice of TCS by the architects on the overall data structures and the infrastructure point of view. I repeat, infrastructure point of view. Self-hosted means Tata Technologies will have the Tata Motors. Tata Motors will have the ownership of the system and data. And if it's on cloud, right? On-premise, on cloud. Yes, in the same case also, the cloud-based databases can be used or the infrastructure will be used. Any cloud infrastructure you know, can you name? If you know any one of you, if you have ever heard.
Infrastructure means hardware only, right?
Right, the AWS,
AWS,
Azure, right?
Microsoft
Google
Azure.
Cloud Platform, right? And you see IBM Cloud, so on. So either you want to run your database on your on-premise one or on cloud on-premise. It's totally the data you own it. I mean, Tata Motors will own it. The data safety, data maintenance, everything. Whereas if it's a cloud, be it a private cloud or public cloud, what happens is the data maintenance and safety will be responsible with the responsibility lies with SAP. So I'm talking about the database and the infrastructure perspective. Okay. Whereas the maintenance of the data and the configurations perspective, how do you maintain the system in private cloud or public cloud would be with SAP only. They'll not be giving it to the to TCS or Wipro or Deloitte, any of these companies usually. And whereas on-premise, complete system hold will be with us. Like configuration will have it, data maintenance, customization, everything would will be with us. So clear so far? Any questions on this?
No, clear. And so on cloud means, as you said, right? For example, if I want to do some configuration, so each and every time I need to go with SAP or how it will be. On-premise means I understood how we are working with
Right?
SAP ECC
ECC
with
the
Google.
same way.
Correct. Cloud means
Correct.
how
So
generally.
ECC, you will have on-premise means also will have the full ownership. We can do what we want. So you can do the upgrades, you can do the configuration, server setup, backups, everything we do. But with on cloud, okay, coming to on cloud, SAP will have the be it a private cloud or public cloud, right? You'll have the problem is where private cloud, right? Then it means you will have the ownership for the configuration. That means TCS can do the configuration for Tata Motors with if it's a private cloud, but public cloud SAP can only do. And the licenses, upgrades, server setup, server backup, everything would be handled by SAP in case of cloud. So now comes, so when in cloud, right? In some parts of private cloud, I repeat, very small portion of private cloud only, the config access will be there with the consultants from any other IT companies or the client. But mostly it would be governed by SAP only. So now the question is, what will the company want? So now the Tata Motors IT head or the infrastructure team who handles the IT has to decide they want a self-hosted on-premise, on-cloud hosted on-premise, or private cloud or public cloud, because what is beneficial for their business process. If you see, on cloud means everything is handled by SAP as a company. So you have to spend only, maybe you have to spend more money, but still everything would be with SAP. SAP takes responsibility of your end-to-end management of SAP as a software. Whereas if it's on premise, you have to decide on, you will own your own infrastructure, and you will maybe, or you give infrastructure to one company and SAP config and setup and processes to other company, right? So this different approaches will get different from company to company. Purely up to the infrastructure and the database management architects from the client's company perspective, and also of course the engagement company like TCS or whoever the partner is can suggest based on their business model, but it's purely a technical uh, decision how they want the process to be maintained in the company. So we functional consultants, in any kind, we don't have any difference if it's this or that, because I have worked on self-hosted and on cloud hosted on premise. It doesn't make any difference. Like you do an SAP on premise on any normal software, or you do an SAP on with normal infrastructure, or you do it with Azure or AWS. Both I worked on GCP also I work, but no difference, at least from the functional perspective we have. I think it's a lengthy explanation, but does that make the sense, or
Yes, yes,
make it clear?
I got it. Just finally, just two questions. You can explain
Go
in
ahead.
short also. The question, the first one is, if it is on cloud, okay. For example,
Hmm?
the business requires new plant creation or company code or any argument, okay. So who will do as a SAP functional consultant? We need to do, or SAP will do. The second one is that it is more technical. See, on cloud. Every time I'm hearing, right, on cloud means, see, we have a presentation application and database servers. If it is on cloud, which will
Hmm?
be on cloud?
Okay, good questions. So first question is, if a new plant comes up, like I said, remember, private cloud is where any config access we will have with, we can do. With public cloud, we cannot do. It would be done by, should be done by SAP. That's my understanding, because on cloud goes very rare implementations, because it would be mostly with SAP. We will not have them. Okay. And second question about, when we say cloud, what will be lying on the cloud? So usually the application and presentation layer, we see presentation layer will be the same what we want to use. Application layer and database would be on cloud, where the data is stored in cloud. When I say cloud, again the concepts of IaaS, PaaS, SaaS and all will come. So the concepts, and I'll not go deep into it, just you for the information I'm saying, IaaS, PaaS, SaaS, which you can refer it through. So where the SaaS is the form of cloud, where software as a service SAP is offering. Software as a service SAP is offering, where any customizations, any data maintenance, everything will be happening in cloud. That means the data is stored in multiple regions of the world. I repeat, cloud maintenance means something in air will not be there. The data is stored in multiple regions and parts of the world. So the data in North America and the same data will be stored in somewhere in South India, so that if something happens to one part of the world, the data center will not get affected, and you can have an uptime of data with the server using this cloud infrastructures. That's where the cloud, where the data stored in cloud means you'll have multiple regions. The world is divided, and multiple regions, without any relevance the data is stored, because if some part of the world is affected, the other part can be up with the data, so that you can use it without any effect, because the physical data centers you have in, right, can be easily damaged. That's why. It makes sense.
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Any one of you? Anybody don't understand something also, please feel free to ask. Everybody able to follow, right? Perfect. So now you see the versions of SAP you'll have been like this. So we'll be going on with the 2021, I guess, the version we have for practice now. So the IDES versions will not be available very immediately when it gets released. So it will not be good for setup. So we'll be using the 2020 or 2021, mostly 2021, I believe, which we got. So we'll be learning. So whatever the changes and all, everything also I'll be covering you guys. No worries at that point. So this is the basic introduction. Hope everyone is clear with the introduction. Okay. So now comes the types of partners. I think maybe before that, let me talk about three-tier architecture. We have the presentation application database, which says the same, and presentation just resides in application. Yeah, just some more theoretical information rather than I would prefer to explain practical with SAP. Okay. So now before we go this, I'll cover a couple of things called what are the types of projects you will have. What are the types of projects you have in SAP is three types of projects you will have team. That is implementation, support, and rollout. So there are two types of implementations, greenfield and brownfield. So this is an official SAP terminology where greenfield implementation means implementing SAP for the first time to a client is called greenfield implementation. Implementing SAP for the first time to a client is called greenfield implementation. Whereas brownfield is basically upgrading the existing SAP system for the client. Okay. So upgrading the existing SAP system like from ECC version 6 to S4 2020 or S4 HANA 1610 to 2022, whatever the version upgrade from SAP ECC to S4 HANA happens, that's called the brownfield implementation. Okay. So whereas whenever we do an implementation, right, we do it, let's assume Tata Motors, we are doing an implementation from TCS perspective. So we develop the processes in a configure the SAP system, but we don't go live. That means we will not ask Tata Motors to use for every plant, every business in at once. Okay. So what happens is once we will do an implementation, we will do an pilot implementation. So what is a pilot implementation for one plant? Usually we say, okay, we'll ask them to start using SAP, and whatever the processes they do, any issues they come up with, we will settle them down. So once the pilot implementation is done for one plant of business, we will roll out that features to multiple other countries of operations or plants, businesses. That's called a rollout. Okay. Rollout is basically extending the pilot implementation to multiple other org units or businesses or countries of operations. That's the difference between implementation and rollout. So now, after an implementation or a rollout, whatever, SAP is designed in such a way that the clients cannot be self-sufficient. We need the projects to be on the support also. Support means in IT terminology, we call it as AMS, application maintenance and support. Application maintenance and support. So where what happens is the support consultants will help with the end users for the configuration, like any issues they get, right, they will solve in the support consultants will solve for the client. So in an implementation project, we will configure the SAP system for the client, whereas in a support project, we will solve the end users, will solve the issues for the end users. Okay. Any other questions on this on the implement types of projects you will have?
Can you repeat once this pilot? What pilot implementation mean?
Okay, so let's assume that we are implementing for Tata Motors, and in India they have 3 plants. In Africa they have 2 plants. Like that, they have multiple plants in multiple business countries. So we don't ask Tata Motors to start implement using SAP for all the transactions from day one for all the plants they have. So what usually we do is we will have then pilot implementation. That means the Tata Motors we will select a plant in one space that they'll be start using that for SAP for all the transactions. And once the system settle down, everything good, we will do this is called a pilot implementation only for one part of business. Assume that one plant they have. Then we will roll out this feature to the other plants or other businesses, other countries also. So you hear this pilot implementation of any feature in software world usually. Like you see WhatsApp has rolled out a new feature in US first, and slowly in a phased manner, they will roll out to the rest parts of the world. That means the feature would be rolled out for one part of business usually. Like we'll ask them to work on. If any issues we identify, we settle them, we clear them and everything good. Then we'll understand how the company is performing. On that basis, any new features to be added on any issues to be identified will be solved and will be rolled out to the other units of the business also, like other plants, other companies, other businesses in other countries of operations for Tata Motors, like that. So implementation, it's not like for all the businesses we will make them use for from the first day. So later on, in a slow and steady manner, it will be done. Whereas be it an implementation or a rollout or a support rollout, the support project will have to become AMS. The support project will be there where in the support project, right, the support consultants will solve the issues for the end users. Any other questions?
Okay, so when it comes to the brownfield, okay, 19009 to 2020 upgradation project. So, for example, if you consider 2020, FPS 1 to FPS 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, that is also considered as upgrade or?
I think feature packs upgrade is not cannot be considered a full upgrade, because that can be usually done on a patch wise by basis. But an upgrade from 2020 to 2021 or something should be considered as an upgrade.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions, team? Anyone?
Yeah, hi Uday. So in the rollout work, who will be working on it? Like the same support team will work or the implementation team will work?
Good question. The implementation team will only work on the rollout usually, and the support will handle the BAU. We call it as business as usual. So where the critical part of a business is to do the support, right? The existing processes and the transactions wherever the business runs is critical, because it should not stop. Because the development team implementation will go on with their new features, as an implementation team will do the rollout.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Anyone? Okay, if no questions, then we'll move on. So now what are we going to talk about is the types of projects are done, right? So who will be doing these projects and all usually is the partner structure we call. Partner structure. So what is a partner structure is basically two types of partner structures we can predominantly talk about is the, let's talk about like the implementation partner or consulting partner we call, okay? And education partner. So implementation or consulting partners are the companies who has the capability to run SAP projects, right, for the clients. I repeat, companies who have the capabilities and competency to run the projects for the clients. That is, you talk about TCS, Wipro, Deloitte, IBM, right? Then any big companies. I'm not saying only these. Any company who has the capability to run SAP projects, right, for the clients, they'll make an alliance with a partner with SAP. So the what happens is SAP cannot implement or support so many clients, so they take the royalty, and we authorized partners. Let's assume TCS has been an authorized partner for SAP, a gold partner or a bronze partner sorry, gold partner only. So what happens is TCS has the competency. TCS has the team of consultants, functional, technical, architects, project managers who knows how to implement SAP or who knows how to support SAP projects. So TCS can implement or can do support on SAP product to the client on behalf of SAP company. I repeat, TCS can either develop or support the SAP product on behalf of SAP company to the customer, that is Tata Motors, let's assume. This is what the implementation or a consulting partner means. They have the competence, they have the capacity, and they have the team who can work, which SAP has authorized. They can do the implementations or supports. Whereas education partners are the ones who are authorized to teach SAP. Like you see, the most common we see is Atos, Siemens, and Delphi Tech, JK Group. So these are all the authorized partners. Atos, Siemens, now it has become, right, and you have JK Tech, JK Tech, and Delphi, and all lot of companies who are authorized partners who can teach SAP on behalf SAP product on behalf of SAP company. So this is the licensing and the partner structure that you have. So there are different in implementation or consulting partner. There are something like bronze, silver, and gold, where based on the amount of work you can do in terms of money, I guess, and capacity, the partnership will be given like bronze or silver and gold. All these big companies, will be a gold partners, and based on the company's range and the kind of projects they operate, the partnership will be with the SAP. So this is the partner structure we have in SAP. Any questions? Any doubts so far? Okay. I hope everyone able to understand now. So this is basic, like the very basic introduction to SAP and to the world of SAP we have talked about till now. Any questions so far on any of the concepts? Anyone? Please feel free to ask me. Don't hesitate. Okay. Now comes to something called inside SAP. We are going to talk about what are the different things and all we have. So basically what happens is SAP as a product or an tool you see, right? What happens is it also follows the SDLC cycle, software development life cycle we call. Software development life cycle is the approach we use for to develop high-end softwares and deliver them to the customers. So where what happens is the product format we use is usually development, quality, production. Development, quality, production, and we have something called sandbox in SAP. Okay. So what happens here is the development, quality, production, sandbox you see is the development project is the development system is the system where you will configure or code new requirements in development system. So where unit testing and functional unit testing is done, and you move the changes to quality for ITC or SIT and UAT. Production is live data, no testing, no development. Sandbox is just a test system for practice or POC, proof of concept. So this is where everywhere you use. Basically in IT, be it a Java based project, .NET based project or SAP project, anything you do, this dev quality production way of cycle of movement of changes should be done. Why? As per the SDLC cycle, this is the best approach mentioned in the guide. So if you see what happens is, let's take an example. I believe most of you have seen this new feature from Zomato called 10 minutes delivery, right? I hope most of you might have heard it. So Zomato says in 10 minutes they want to give a delivery, which is not existing in the market today. In the Zomato app, if you go, it's not existing, right? So what it's a new feature as the Zomato is rolling out. So what happens is they have to develop that feature. The coding config requirements, what has to be done in the backend Zomato app, they have to do. And that should be tested properly by the developers in the development system. And then it would be moved to quality. So the quality app, what the testings will be done and rigorously will be seen for different scenarios. And the end users kind of us will be also testing that. And when they move the changes to production, that means the setup is in production. Whatever the Zomato app you use is the production Zomato app. So because you create a order, that order goes to the restaurant and they have to deliver it. It's not a dummy one, right? So like that, if you talk about SAP, there would be no external users, only our company users would be using it usually, right? But we have to develop the new any requirement that comes. If it's a configuration, we do. If it's a coding, the ABAP consultants will do. We have to do that new development or configuration or coding in development system. So in the development SAP system, you will do that. And whatever, once the coding or configuration is done, unit testing and functional unit testing should be done. So unit testing by ABAP coding team will do. Functional unit testing is the functional consultant like MMSD, FI consultants will do. So once we do the functional unit testing and we see, okay, this process is running good. The configuration or the coding or the setup we did is running good. Then we move the changes from development to quality. Then we move the changes from development to quality. So once the changes are moved to quality, there would be rigorous round of testings for integration testing. So where ITC is integration test cycle, SIT is system integration testing. ITC is integration test cycle, SIT is system integration testing. And UAT, because in the client SMEs, the Tata Motors SMEs will do the integration testing and see with different modules how the integration is happening, all the processes. And the end users who will be daily creating the sale orders, purchase orders, payments and all, they will at the end come and see if the system is good, what we developed, user acceptance testing. So once that is done, then the changes are moved to production. So integration testing would be done in couple of rounds, minimum 2-3 rounds. We will do different cycles, different scenarios with integrated, how if actually what we developed or intended to develop is running or not. And then at the end, users will test if their daily activities they are able to do or not. Then the changes are moved to production where the actual business process will work, creating the purchase orders, creating the sale orders, creating the different things and all. Sandbox is an SAP terminology for a test system. Sandbox means just a test system SAP will use. Or if at all any requirement comes for which we have to do a proof of concept, we can do using sandbox also. This is the dev quality production approach we will have for every project. Sandbox in some projects we will have, some we may not have. It's up to the client to decide if sandbox has to be kept or not. So any questions, any doubts on this? Okay. So if no questions, everyone able to understand? So now we come up with, after this, the next thing that comes up is, what is the clients you have to log in, client and login process. So you see, I hope most of you have the SAP setup like GUI like this. So we will have an SAP server and maintenance. Okay. So where if you go to the properties, you will see like there is this is called the GUI. Okay. Sorry, someone has a question. Okay, so someone is not on mute. That's okay. So SAP GUI setup, okay, with the connection you will be maintaining, where you will see there would be in the properties you will be able to see that the application server instance system ID. So application server and will be like this, and instance and system ID would be given, which we will have to add so that we can log into the GUI, the graphic user interface, the graphic user interface. So when you try to log in, you see client 100 is sandbox with demo data, client 200 like that. You will have different, what we say, different details on the information here for every system, be it your project system also, you'll have the same. So where you'll have that the client you are using, this client is not your Tata Motors. I repeat, this is an SAP client, not your Tata Motors customer or client whom we implement. So what happens is now you go do a user password and you will do the login. What happens in a real time is you will have this like let's suppose 100 config client, 101 ABAP client, 102 master data loading client, okay, 103 testing client. That is nothing but UT client we call. So usually for development system only, okay, for dev systems only, you will have the config client, ABAP client, master data client, testing client, and all kind of things. Okay. So which you will be logging into different clients. So you as a functional consultant wants to do the configuration, you will do client 100, you will give your login and login. If you are an ABAP if you are an ABAP consultant for coding, you will go do a 101 client and do your login. So each client will have a different password. Of course, user ID can be the same, but different passwords and maintenance, so that configuration should be done in development client. So in 100 client, ABAP will have coding client separate, which the changes will be moved to testing client, and in the testing client only we will test the changes in development. Whereas for QA and prod and sandbox, no different, only single client will have, because you don't have any different things. In quality, you will only test. Production, you will only use the system. Sandbox, you will only test. So that's why quality, production, sandbox will have only one client. This client I'm talking about, not the customer. Please be informed. So in development systems only in SAP, you will have a config client, ABAP client, coding client, and the testing client or the master data loading client, where different activities can be done and the testing and finally can be done. Any questions, any doubts so far on this? Okay. Now comes the question is, this is the basic introductions on the SAP. Now we will also go on to the login scenarios. Okay, so we will be logging in as well. So now you do a user password input and login. So maybe I'll have to do 100 for this system. So once you log in, you will see the SAP menu on you see SAP Easy Access screen like this. Okay. The SAP Easy Access screen like this, where any information of the client can be maintained, like a photo like this. If not, you can keep it empty also. That would be ABAP work or basis work. We don't do that. Okay. So this server, what you are seeing is the S4HANA 2021 fully activated server. So SAP S4HANA is the latest version of SAP we are using in the market. 2022 is latest, but it's released in now, I think this year, November. So it's not into the market yet so easily for us to use fully. So now, once you log in, you will see three things you will see. That is, on the top, you will see a menu bar. This is the menu bar. This is the toolbar with command field. I repeat, toolbar with command field. And this is the SAP menu you will have. Okay, I think before that you see something called system requirements. Usually minimum of 2 GB RAM or 4 GB RAM also will work. Any laptops, any issues, normal simple ones will work. You see 4 GB RAM, 2 GB RAM. I have worked on 2 GB RAM Windows systems also where SAP works. This GUI whole setup. So you need not to worry. Disk space of this much, very small space SAP asks for. So you need not to worry about the installation. Of course, yours is your office laptop, so you can use it as well. So, and the client logins we talked about. Now we go into the login. You see, we are done with this PPT. We'll be covering the next one later. Okay. So now you go to this menu bar, toolbar with command field, and the system. What we say, bottom left corner is the status bar we have. So before we will be talking about it, one thing we'll see is, so you see the menu bar will have different options. So the menu bar, new window or restore or close, right? Menu bar, user menu, SAP menu, workplace, different options you will have. So the menu options what you have will be different in each transaction you use. In each transaction you use, the menu options will be different. That is, if you do a transaction called ME21N, you will have an option here. You see purchase order, create purchase order, save and all. Edit, different options you will have. Okay. Maybe if you do to try to do a goods receipt, in that transaction, you will have the different menu options. So remember, the menu options will be different from transaction to transaction. The menu options will be different from transaction to transaction. And the toolbar will be having the command field. The toolbar will be having the command field. So in the toolbar, if you see different options like go back, go completely back is this one. Just take a step back is this one, or go to the next is usually the green that comes. And any save you want to do, this option you can use. And here you see you want to print or find any control F you can do here, and page up, page down, right? You can do. Here you see something called new GUI window, right? So before I talk about this new GUI window, you see here in the bottom right corner, you will see system, client, user ID, then program, transaction, report, response time, and all will be there. So if I do the system S4H100, what is this one? I'll show you. If you see next new GUI window, it will open S4H2. You see S4H3 came up. Okay, no worries. Then if you go to S4H2, 4, everything will come. S4H4, S4H5, new GUI one more time, 6, so 7, like that. Every new window you open, the new windows will open. So in real-time projects, I repeat, in real-time project systems, the max number of windows you can open is 6 only, guys. The max number of windows you can open is only 6. But this test systems usually support more windows. But you see these many SAP parallel screens you can open to do different transaction in each screen. I repeat, each screen you can have a different transaction. Here you want to create a PO, here you want to do a GR, here you want to do an IR, here you want to create a material, here you want to do a sale order, here you want to do a payment. Different transactions can be done. So in order to do different transactions parallelly or open some display transactions, you need to have the parallel screens open. So the max screens you can have open is 6 only in the projects usually. Here is a test system, it goes more. Okay. So if you don't want them, what can you do? You can close here, you see, close 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 1, right? So if you try to close this also, yes, if it asks, do you want to log off? You say yes, totally SAP closes. And you again want to log in. Okay, you will log in. So the number of screens you want can be usually 6, and which user, what transaction you are in also SAP will say with this new GUI window option. Okay. And you have something at the options, customize local layout. So in the options, okay, for everyone, please do this setup in your SAP systems. You have to go to this customize local layout, go to the options. In the options, if you see, you will have a screen like this, visual data. In the visual data, you will have the themes. So whatever the theme, it's okay. You no need to change usually. If you want to change the theme, you can change. So font settings, in what font you want to see the SAP words. Okay. And branding, what brand, and this time custom colors. So you see a default SAP signature default blue, or you want a red, purple, green, or gold. What do you want? You can select save as, click apply, and OK if you want to change. So I like the blue. Usually I keep it blue. But if what usually we do is, if development system, we will use blue, quality we use green, production we use red, like that. The reason is to differentiate from development to quality to production easily, because every SAP system looks the same, right? So rather than to be on safer side, to be easily able to identify, what we do in a real time is blue for development, one color for quality, one color for production systems. If you want, you can change, but if you don't want, you can keep as is. But interaction design, if you go to visualization one. Interaction design with visualization one. In controls, you have show keys within drop down list. Click on this, yes. In the controls, show keys within drop down list, sort by keys with drop down list. You do this, guys. This you both keep tick and click on apply and OK. So this is required for us to do all the transactions. You can easily see the prefixes in them. So I'll wait here for a second. Maybe you want to see this, you can see, so that it will easily do. Okay. So this is the basic setup you will do. Rest all nothing is required. And now you see the menu bar we talked about, and the toolbar and command field if you have to use a command. Okay. Command field is basically SAP has always been a transaction code basis tool. So you will do every transaction, what you have will be with a transaction code. Like you give the commands, it works. But the commands you have to give is either with /n or /o. /n means if you give ME21N, right, it will be for create purchase order. You see, create purchase order. If you give something different transaction without prefix of /n or /o, system won't take. System doesn't understand. Either /n or /o should be given for SAP to understand the command. So if you give /n migo in the same screen, new transaction will open. The same screen, new transaction will open. But if you want a different screen, /o should be given. So where a different transaction, different screen will open. Okay. So you should give either /n or /o. Remember that, guys. /n you give, then only SAP will be able to understand the commands. Either /n if in the same screen you want a different transaction, but /o if you want a different screen, different transaction. And if you want to completely close the SAP, you can have /n-ex. /n-ex is for completely closing the SAP. Any questions, any doubts so far? Okay, so now we move on to this SAP menu. So where you will have different options, like which we will be seeing later. Maybe like in the logistics, you'll go to different transactions of metals management, which you can do instead of transaction. I said, right? The commands, instead of going to the commands you want to do using the menu, you can do. So instead of creating ME21 for create, you will see you can create, you can go here and do an create, double click, it will go to transaction code also. So instead of giving the transaction codes, you want to do this menu, you can use the menu. Okay. Now, so now let me go back. No. So the SAP menu is there. This is one option you have. And what else we have? Yeah. So menu bar is done. Toolbar with command field is done. We are going to talk about the status bar. So status bar is basically if you go to ME21 and let's suppose I'll show any data you input. Okay. Any data you input. If you have any issues with that data, SAP will give an error or warning or message success. How is that? So let me show you. So let's suppose I'll give this vendor. So it is asking a purchase group. That means errors will come in red. That means without giving the purchasing group, I cannot move forward. Without giving the purchasing group, I cannot move forward. I'll give it. It's now asking give a company code. So I give the material. System is asking required a condition. So let me take some any issues you have in SAP, the error will come up, which error will not allow you to do move forward. So I'll give 10 pieces I need. And system is asking, please enter a required condition. Let me move that and give a condition and maintain the price here, 10 euros. So 10 piece, 10 euros. You see, if it's an error, system will give the in red. If it's a warning, warning can be ignored, system will give it in amber or yellow. Warnings can be ignored. SAP don't usually stop you from posting a transaction. But of course, yes, it's not a good practice to ignore a warning and go ahead in a real practice. So if you see the effective price is 10.10 and metal price is 1.65 and I'm giving something 10 euros, SAP is giving, boss, you are differing from the amount. So I'm okay if I want to do, I can check, but warnings will be in yellow, which can be considered as good to go. SAP will not stop, but that's not an actual practice to go. So after you give the data, okay, after you give the data, so you will do a check. So you see, these are all the warnings SAP is giving. Following mandatory rules, mandatory, MRP is special procurement, K for this, effective price, special scheduling agreement exists, right? Different things SAP says. You want to ignore all of them, you can ignore. Or if there are no errors, usually what happens, if there are warnings, SAP will show. If there are no warnings, SAP will show no warnings, no messages, you are good to go. Then you can create a save the purchase order. So if you save a purchase order, what happens? You see standard PO created under the number. So success messages will come in green. I repeat, the success messages will come under green color. So red, yellow, and green for hard stop errors or issue warnings and success messages. Okay, so any issues you get in the bottom left corner only is the status, like error or warning or message in every transaction you'll get here only. That's why we call it as the status bar. Menu bar, toolbar with command field, and the status bar. So any transaction you do slash n slash o. Don't forget, every transaction you should do slash n or slash o. Don't forget that. Okay. Then, after you give slash n ME21N, let's suppose a transaction code, you should click either this green tick or your enter button on the keyboard. I repeat, green tick or enter button, anything you can click. So if you click this, it will take to the transaction, or I want to click it my this thing slash OME21N. I will click on my keyboard. I'm not clicking this. Okay. I'm just clicking on my keyboard enter. It will take. So that is how you can use the transaction codes in SAP. Any questions? Any doubts so far? Anyone? Everybody clear on the introduction? Perfect. The silence seems good. So we have discussed the basic introductions so far, and now we are going to talk about an data cycle in SAP on procurement perspective on procurement, and we'll move on to the next aspects technically. So we are done with the introductions so far. We'll be moving on to the simple procurement cycle in SAP today. Any questions so far? Any one of you? All right. So no issues then. We'll move forward, and we will talk about the procurement cycle today. We are done with the introduction, so we'll move on to the procurement cycle. So today, now the concept would be to cover is the procurement cycle. And after the procurement cycle, we have the disclaimer site, and we are going with the agenda of creating it and doing a procurement cycle today. That is, in the agenda, we are going to cover the procurement cycle first, then the parts of procurement cycle, the requirement determination, then the PR, PO, GR, IR cycle. So procurement cycle, we start, right? It starts with basically requirement determination. So requirement determination is basically what do you want? So requirement determination covers up what do you want, what kind of things you want to buy for your company, materials, services, assets. These are the three different categories of materials you frequently buy. For example, raw materials for your production, equipment maintenance, equipment servicing, okay, kind of services, or something like machine, painting, wall painting, gardening, any kind of service in your plant or company. Buying the assets, plots or lands or buildings or this equipment you want to, how you want to maintain the asset format, right? You can keep it also. So any materials or services or assets you have, right? You can create them as the materials or services as assets, and you can do a procurement for them. You can do a procurement for them. So requirement determination is about what you want. You want to buy a material or a service or an asset. So you have to decide your requirement. So let's suppose you decide you want the raw materials for your production. You want to do the raw materials for your production. Then once you decide what do you want, let's suppose you decide what you want the raw material for production. The next thing that comes up is source determination. So source determination is basically whom do you want to buy from? Whom do you want to buy from? So if you decide you want to buy in vendor, right? So you source determination is basically you know any vendor you want to buy from, or you have a contract with any vendor, right? Or you don't know any vendor and you want to go for a bidding process. Bidding means you don't know any vendor who supplies at what price, so you want to go for that vendor what we say vendor setup, right? So you go to a bidding process. We call it as RFQ in SAP. So if you don't know any vendor to buy that material at what price, you go for an RFQ. You request for quotations. Okay, request for quotations, and that request for quotations, what you create to the vendors, they will give the quotation. So you ask for a material. So you remember, right? Even if you want any material, any item, you go to, maybe if you're building a home, usually, you go for, or maybe you are going for a bike, you go to multiple showrooms or cars and you take the quotations. So you ask for request for quotation, the guys will give the quotations, and then you select a source. So let's suppose you have a 3-4 Honda showrooms in your city, maybe in a city like Hyderabad or Bangalore. So each showroom you go and take a request for quotation. So one guy, all of them gives a quotation. Some guys will say some offer like, okay, you take this at this price, I'll give you some free accessories. Or some guys will have a price less, but accessories will not be free, right? So like that, you see that you take the quotations and then you select the source in order to buy my requirement, which guy is correct. Okay. Then after the source selection is done, you will order. But not every time you will have to go for a source selection, right? Because once you select a source for a material, it's good. You need not to order, you need not to go for again every time the RFQ. You have a confirmed vendor whom will you use to create the purchase orders. So requirement determination, source determination, like identifying the vendor to purchase. If you don't know any vendor, you go for a bidding or RFQ process. And then you know what to buy and whom to buy from. Now what we know is what to buy and whom to buy from. So once you got to know, what is the next step? You will create a purchase order. What is a purchase order? A purchase order is a formal document sent to the vendor requesting goods delivery. I repeat, a purchase order is a formal document sent to the vendor requesting goods delivery. Boss, I need so and so material at so and so cost at so and so date at my location. Can you please deliver it to me? Okay. So this is a purchase order is a formal document sent to the vendor. Then what we understand is basically, okay, the purchase order is sent with an output, like you want an print or an email or a fax or what, you will send the email to the or the output to the vendor. So then only the vendor will know, right? So you create a purchase order and any follow-up is required you will do, or any changes required you will do. And then for the purchase order you created and sent to the vendor. Okay, for the purchase order you created and sent to the vendor, the goods receipt should be done. When? When the vendor will give the goods to you. When the vendor will give the goods to you, you will do a goods receipt for the purchase order. That means I received so and so stock from this purchase is what we update in goods receipt. For the purchase order we created and sent from SAP, we will receive the physical goods in our plant. For that goods, we will update the goods receipt that, okay, as per this purchase order ordered, this much stock we got. Why do we do that? Because when we have to take the bill and do the payment, we will get to know, okay, this much amount we need to pay because this much we got the stock for. Okay. And also to keep the stock levels up in SAP. And then once the goods are received, we will do what? Invoice. Invoice is nothing but the bill the vendor will send. Boss, you purchased this much I received this much, I have sent you this much quantity, so for which you have to pay me this much amount. So for the quantity you purchased, I delivered, this is the amount you need to give. So this amount invoice, we accept it from the procurement space so that the finance can clear the payment. The finance will clear the payment. This is called the end-to-end procurement cycle. So it starts with requirement determination of what to buy and where to buy from, buying, receiving the goods, accepting the invoice, and doing the payment. So this procurement cycle is standard everywhere in the world, I would say. This procurement cycle will be standard everywhere in the world. When I say when it's standard everywhere in the world, I'll give you a couple of examples. So the first thing is basically, I'll give you, maybe let's suppose you want to have lunch now. So you want to have lunch is your requirement. Then what is your requirement in detail? You want to have your North Indian food or a South Indian food? What do you want to eat? So let's suppose if you decide you want a North Indian food, that's your requirement. Then the source determination, which vendor you will want to eat it from, right? So you will select, let's suppose maybe Haldiram's or Bikaner Wala. They have their outlets. Okay, so you decide. So you select a vendor, you order the food, right? The food you order, you receive the food, you take it, you eat it, you take the bill, you come out. So and you take, that's an, what we say, consumable procurement. You immediately consumed what you need. And whereas if you see something like your mother has told you in home or your wife has told you, okay, I want groceries, so and so list. So you take the requirement, then you want to go which vendor. You want to go to DMart, Reliance, Star, Ratnadeep, whatever, right? Once you identify the source, you will go to that, you order it, what you got, you take that, you take the items, you take the bill, you do the payment, and you come. This is an stockable procurement because the food you take, you immediately eat it, but groceries, you consume day by day when you use it, right? So wherever you go, the procurement cycle is same, I say, but the types of procurement you do will be different. So that too in an industry grade you do are very, very different cycles in different scenarios. So those all procurement cycles and scenarios we will be covering. And we will be proceeding with a simple procurement cycle to run in SAP. Then we'll be moving on to different other things. So any questions before I proceed further? Anyone? I don't know if this is would be for CS underscore TS 450 or 452 they have. So mostly it should be for 450 is what I believe. 452. Yeah, most people what will write the most. That's one. Not for upskilling.
Which one is the latest version for is it
Sorry?
450 or 450? Which one is the latest
450.
version?
No, both are same. Everything will have the latest. Let me talk about it. SAP Training Shop. If we go.
So in every module, we have two. One is normal, one is upscaling. So
Correct.
as already Uday explained, so it will go year by year, 1909, 2020, 2021. So 2021 is the latest. In 2021, we have two exams. One is normal, one is upscaling. It applicable for all SD,
SDMM,
MM
yes,
and all.
PP, QM everywhere. So if you see TS 450 is for upskilling for experts. 452 is for normal. So I think the difference is it will have inventory also, upskilling for experts. So while I have written upskilling for experts was like a bit difficult. So I think I don't, maybe the Fury part, everything is also added, but it's okay, manageable, not a big deal. So 2021 is the latest we have, 2020. So whatever your company provides the voucher for, you can go ahead is my view. And the good thing is you
So
see
we should
80
target
questions. Sorry, Syed, go ahead.
yeah, sorry. So we should target for 452 or 450? Which one?
Can you be louder, please? I couldn't hear.
Which one we should target? 452 or 450?
I would say 452 is better to go. 80 questions,
Okay.
61% passing with this is the questions range coming in. So these are the
Okay.
concepts. Yeah, I
Okay.
would.
Okay.
And meanwhile, to go right, so you see this integration aspects are covering in 452, but 450 will have that more integration aspects like CBP versus MRP, and then your integration areas with Fiori technical and also would be covered. So both are still okay. So I think analytics,
Okay.
everything is the
Fine.
same. Yeah. And if it's covered, let's suppose with this one, what nowadays we are also proposing people if they are wish to go is there is one thing from cloud also SAP is giving. So SAP procurement cloud, sourcing and procurement cloud SAP is giving. Hmm, where is this?
What about upskilling for experts, Uday? Will this help in that? Is this going to help anyway? What we are
It
going
doesn't make
to.
big difference, I would say, because I was certified in upskilling for experts. So the
Okay.
only thing is it increased the complexity in the exam, but nothing more. At least I have seen different.
Okay.
There might be a considerable some integration perspectives which SAP is asking in the upskilling for experts. So both 450 or 452 is still okay, but anything anywhere around like people with less experience on and with less hands-on, I would say prefer the normal one, and maybe whoever has a lot of experience with integration aspects and overall architecture, go for an upskilling for experts is okay. And maybe this also is one more aspect. This is a cloud one SAP is giving. SAP sourcing and procurement implementation cloud. So where I think they are talking about more with Ariba integration, configuration, BP testing, then activate methodology, best practices, and that what we say, um, best practices, right? All these things they are asking questions about. So you see this also questions like cloud security, GDPR for Europe, global data regulation protection program, right? And identity access management IAM. So these are something like which is goes more from only from single tenant, multi-tenant cloud systems you talk particularly, right? I think there is a good amount of what we say learning hub document on sorry videos also on this, but first we go to 450 or 452 on-premise one, then maybe if you can read and go through this cloud is my point of view that can be done. And the problem with this is I am not sure if this cloud also has that, but stay current is what SAP is coming up with. So stay current means we have to write an exam it was every once a year, but now it's doing twice a year. So twice in a year, that SAP comes with the latest more data, right? You have to clear. Like suppose you see 2208 means 2022 08. So SAP will come up with 2212 also. So 22.2, 22.5, 22.8, 22.12. 4 versions each year. So once in a quarter, you will get one version upgrade from SAP. So what SAP believes is as earlier one version you go through each year is okay, but now SAP says you have to stay current for every 2 quarters once. So that's also with every cloud SAP is coming up with. So stay current means with Learning Hub access only we can write down. It's not a proctored exam, but once we clear that every year if we are stay current, then only SAP considers that the certification is valid. Else, no. That's a problem also with the cloud certifications. Maybe you will see the same even in Ariba also. You see any of the Ariba ones, you need to go for that.
This is
All
for
the
only cloud, right? Stay current.
right, yeah. Only stay cloud certifications, you have the stay current. The on-premise ones, we need not to do. The on-premise, I think it's now 5 years is the validity SAP is giving.
Okay, so for example, so I'm having the learning hub from the TCS, that is the S
Mhm,
user ID, okay?
mhm.
And I'm writing the exam with my personal, that is P user ID. So in
Okay.
that case, how we can go stay current?
So Learning Hub, yes, so that's a good question. Usually it's preferable to do with the company's access and then do. So, or maybe if you go personal also, usually TCS kind of companies will reimburse, right? So better keep the company details and go with so that you'll have the Learning Hub access from, so it will be integrated and you can do. So at least with the outside to inside integration, I have not seen because luckily I also got the vouchers. That's why.
Correct. Actually, so nowadays companies are providing two vouchers, right? So we have other option.
Huh,
We can go
huh.
with the P user ID and we can go with the 6 attempts. So because of that, whichever is better, we can go with that, right? Because of that, I'm asking. Nothing. Yeah.
Right. Yes, that's better. And yeah, I think the voucher 2 rounds, I also had the same way, like one Ariba procurement I have written, and one is the 450, the upskilling I have written. Instead, people choose normal one also is okay.
Can you open that any that normal procurement exam? Just
This
I want.
one, let's
Correct.
go
Yes, yes.
this.
So just I want. Can you scroll and expand anyone invoice verification or expand? It is to all. Okay. So here we have TS 450 to TS 450. So this is
Hmm.
HANA. The below one are sorry, S4, S4 550, S4 520. These are HANA. Whoever is having learning hub access from the TCS, these are very good materials. Okay. If you have time, we can go through this. S4 550, S4 520, below S4 500, S4 520, because it is a lengthy document, but it is very good. Instead of googling or any other materials, it is very good and it will explain each and every config or each and every word clearly.
Is where it is
And if you are having SAP Learning Hub access, so you can go and type S4 550. So you can get one document, latest document 2021. So these are the document. These contains
I think maybe if we click here also, it should, sorry, this S450, it will take if we have
it will
Learning Hub
go
access.
if you have Learning Hub access. Correct.
which one is the
No.
latest S4 450?
No, I mean like this, whatever the documents we have is the updated one. So 2021 SAP is providing. If 550, 520 is for configuration. For procurement, you have something else, 500, 510, like that. So if we click directly the documentation and videos are also there, I believe in this. So
So here,
some of them.
yeah, S4 550 is for purchasing. S4 550 will be there in all 2020, 2021, 1909. Means S4 550 is fixed. And in S4 550 is for purchasing. 2021 is the latest one.
Okay. So in our Learning Hub, it is available.
Yes, it is available. Yeah. I don't have access, but some other my colleagues are having access. I checked it. Yeah.
Okay. So we will jump on our topics. Okay.
Yeah, Uday, just one more quick question. So you said right, just on cloud and on premise. So on premise means the database will be only one place, and cloud means it is multiple places. That's what I understood. Correct?
Right. So in short, yes. So maybe if you go to this IaaS SaaS PaaS, you'll get to know where what I have seen in Azure and cloud and infrastructures, what they're providing. What I've heard is basically you have they will divide the world into regions, and in multiple regions of the world, you will have the database in physical databases data is storing. So if some part of the world you have the data is lost, let's suppose you have a company Tata Motors in India predominantly. So you have a data center in India, so if something happens to that state, a natural calamity or something, and if the data cannot be accessed, it's gone. But in cloud, what happens is this data in another part of the region, let's suppose South Africa or South America, which has no relation to do any kind of issues usually we don't get in common, natural calamities or man-made things. So then they store it, right? So what happens is you'll have a quick uptime of the data which is up and running without you losing the data, with even if the physical data center in one place is lost. That's being called as the on cloud. But with on cloud, what happening is if it's on-premise cloud, right? You will have access to all your systems as usual as a functional consultant. But if it's private cloud or public cloud, mostly access is being with SAP only.
Okay. The cloud also the physical database only. As you said, it is not on air. It is physical database, but multiple places. Yeah, I got.
Correct.
And this is means just one more question. Actually, so for example, if India is there, Sri Lanka is there, China is there. So if I am retrieving the data, so from where it will come? Generally means just
Directly and immediately it will be from the main database where you are using it from. But if it in case of it's a backup storage where we do in other regions, right? So if it's lost, we quickly update. So you might have heard the word called disaster recovery we normally have in ECC implementations also. Like the data is being always fed from the main system to the disaster recovery system, and if something goes wrong, then the disaster recovery will be up and connected to the main production. Till then it's a side by side data feeding system where it just keeps on feeding and keeping as a safety buffer.
Got it. Just like in memory, it will be in RAM and it will be in hard disk. Okay, got it.
No. Yeah.
Thank you.
So some things I'll try to cover, that is basically if we see. So S4HANA, we see this, it runs on only HANA database, and we can see there is in ECC days there is no cloud supportivity, but now we do on-premise and cloud we talked about. So something in a change perspective, we call there are a couple of changes which SAP is giving with S4HANA, that is OLTP and OLAP. OLTP talks about high transaction processing and OLAP talks about high querying volume. So high transaction or high querying volumes, so is the option technically OLTP and OLAP call, but is something which SAP is giving now. So what it means to be what it means for you and me as a functional consultant is, probably you might all recall in all the ECC projects, MRP used to be run post working hours, and some plants will have only some days the MRP running. So most common design it used to be there in all the ECC projects is like, if you have 10, 20, 100 plants, we will decide with a variant, okay, for these days only, for these plants the MRP will run, not for everyone else. So this kind of differences you see basically, right? It will be done in ECC days because to balance the loads. But with now this OLTP, high transaction processing and high querying volumes capacities, what SAP says is, says, I'm saying, you can run MRP any number of times a day. I repeat, you can run MRP any number of times a day. So that's the biggest statement SAP has said, like you want, anytime you want to run, you go and do the transaction. So instead of MD0123, we got MD01N, so where you can run also. And of course, there is a good amount of processings which SAP is giving with OLTP and OLAP, where I saw there was a customer which is very similar to Walmart. Okay. So in the peaks time, they had that for 6 hours of business, they'll might have, for every 5 minutes they can have 2000 sales orders created. So that was the range of their business they'll come up with. So how do they do is with a custom program and all, they wanted like with these things, or maybe you manually do it. So but that was a performance testing we did in one of the projects to make sure that yes, it's working. So that kind of heavy transactions with huge volumes can also be done through, like in a mostly in a dairy and food and beverage industry, I have seen that. And this is one more difference. OLAP is a technical thing, but what it means to us is a high transactions and with huge volumes we can do. And the next thing we talk about is SAP NetWeaver portals. So for anything we want to do, we used to have an SAP NetWeaver portals in ECC days, but now with S4HANA we have the GUI, and all the GUI transactions can be done even in Fiori also. All the GUI transactions can be done in Fiori. So Fiori is a web browser based technology from SAP. Okay. Fiori is a web browser based technology from SAP, where SAP is trying to build this Fiori, which is there in ECC days also, but with S4 it's been mandatory. So in every S4HANA implementation, no end user will log into GUI. I repeat, no end user will log into GUI, and all the transactions they'll be doing in Fiori only. Okay. So now comes the question is, how do you log in and open Fiori and all? We'll see. So before that, Fiori is very easy to use is what I say. And what is the processes and all I'll be covering independently. But just as a quick view, if I cover, let me log in. What is my password? So there is a T code for to open Fiori, that is /n/UI2/FLP. /n/UI2/FLP. You click enter. So you see there is a web browser that is opening up. You want to open, you go to advanced. You see this one. A web browser is opening up, and you need not to open from the GUI always. The T code to open is /n/UI2/FLP. But let me ping it in the chat as well for you, team. So you log in with, you'll have the same login. System will expect you to do this. Okay. And let me give my login and password, and let me give the user. So the same login for Fiori and GUI would be there. There is no separate login you will have. Okay. So if you want a different login, it's up to the basis to give, but you'll have the same login. And this is how the Fiori link screen comes, and it will load a bit slow. Remember guys, Fiori is a SAP on browser. So all the functionalities to work on SAP will have to work on Fiori. So it would be a bit slow than GUI, but no end user will be given access to GUI in S4 implementations. Only Fiori will be working. So any end user transactions we will be using during Fiori. What is the benefit of it? There is no bulky white elephant SAP setup to be done in GUI in the desktops of when the users. And the advantage is this Fiori is a browser based. You can use it in your laptops, mobiles, tablets, and desktops. So there would be apps kind of process like you see on my Windows, right? So when I click my Windows on my laptop, the way I want to use a Word document I want to open, the same way I want to open a create purchase order, I can open. So this kind of tile based approach which SAP is giving with Fiori, which eases the transactions because it's a standard SAP offering which we can use rather than customizing the NetWeaver portals and bringing on information and with heavy controls onto it. So SAP Fiori is the latest option which SAP is giving with S4 HANA, which we are implementing for every client. This is one more change. Any questions, any doubts on this so far? Okay. So now comes the question is SAP states, okay, with S4 HANA, what SAP says is there is reduced total cost of ownership and increased ROI than ECC. Reduced total cost of ownership. That means with the use of S4 HANA implementation methods with Activate methodology, there is reduced total cost of ownership and increased ROI than ECC. So return on investment, what we have. And then enhanced business processes which provides optimized procurement in S4 HANA and with good amount of analytics is the new option in S4 HANA. So these are the primary changes we see from ECC to S4 HANA. Like the versions we already talked about, ECC to S4 and the on-premise versions, cloud versions, right? And then what else we have? We talked about the OLTP, OLAP, then we talked about the on-premise and on-cloud S4 HANA, and then the table structures, and then the Fiori also we talked about, then the cost of ownership things. So any questions, any doubts so far, anyone? Okay. So now comes the question is basically, what is the change from a modules perspective? Is there a change in any of the modules that we are working in S4HANA, like the MM, SD, PP, QM and all the modules you have? So no, that's exactly the same what you have, okay? And the only difference that's coming up is in S4HANA, the EWM, which is earlier it was a different system, okay? Earlier it was a different system. Now S4 has integrated EWM to the same system. So in one login, you will have EWM also. So any EWM transactions and all you want to process, you can do them in S4 HANA directly. So S4 HANA need not to be a separate login or setup. So that's the module perspective. That's the only change. All right. So these are the these are the primary changes which we talk about as an introduction, and there would be specific things we'll be talking about in the future classes as well, which I'll be covering as a gist. What are we going to cover from tomorrow, team? Okay, so as per the plan or whatever the things, we are going to talk about this first, the changes from ECC to S4, and then later on we talk about any not change things also. So the very basic things we talk about will be the master data things. Okay, so the master data things like the material master wise, vendor master wise, there are a good amount of changes that we got from ECC to S4, which we will be covering. Okay, and after the material master vendor master changes, we'll cover about the configurations in them as well, and then we'll be covering the Fiori. So Fiori for all the transactions. Okay, Fiori for all the transactions we'll be covering, and then what else we have? We will be covering the flexible workflow for purchasing documents, all of the purchasing documents, for and BRF plus the output management for purchasing documents as well. So flexible and BRF plus are the two main things. We may not show an output to you, but I'll show you the end-to-end configuration with the links. Okay, so the reason is we need the basis ABAP. All these are experienced consultants can understand. We need the basis ABAP and GRC setups and with HR integration. Else we can't do this. So I'll show you the config and the steps. How do we do? Maybe the last part of approval or rejection we may not be able to see. If we are able to see, that's good. I'll do it with you. And then later on we talk about some specific processes. And as for implementation methods with activate methodology, Jira, user story formats, and some part of RISEF requirements changes we came up with S4 methodologies and best practices using them, how to implement, and the data migration methods also will be covered up. So this would be the scope for S4 HANA specifics from who already have a knowledge on MM on ECC. So this was the intent to cover. So we will be covering in cycles end to end all the processes. And maybe yeah, service procurement also would be covered. And what else we have? Any changes from the tables, T codes perspective also I'll cover. So from an implementation perspective of S4 particularly. It makes sense, everyone? Any other points every one of you want to add up through or you think about? Okay.
Attendance, you guys can ignore for now. There might be some embed error.
Mhm.
Anyway, for Syed, the daily attendance list will be sent out.
Okay.
So no need to worry about that.
Thank you for attending the session. I hope you all enjoyed it. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Also feel free to ask your questions in the comment section below, and we will reply to them at the earliest.